Our session today is creating customer engagement. So we're going to look at how organizations can capture, convert, and retain more customers by creating a compelling and engaging customer engagement experience. So our presenter today is Andrea Simmons, INM's Marketing Director. Andrea is responsible for all of our corporate marketing efforts. Andrea also works with a number of our clients on their multi-channel marketing strategies. She helps them define their marketing mix and delivers content that's used across channels. Her background in marketing, public relations, and customer service equips her to guide our clients through defining and executing their multi-channel marketing mix. My name is Nadine Hussain, and I am the Web Technologies Strategist here at INM. So I will be your host today, and I'll be here throughout the session to help you with any questions that you may have while Andrea presents. So before we dive into our topic today, I'd like to review a few quick items. Today the session should run about 35 to 45 minutes, and then after that we're going to take 10 to 15 minutes for any questions that you may have. So feel free to type your questions into the question box that you can see on your right-hand side, and you can type them up as they come to mind throughout the broadcast, and I'll collect them up and hold them for Andrea to address at the end of the presentation. If you have any challenges with the audio or the content delivery, please let me know right away. All you have to do is type a message into the chat box that's also on the right-hand side of your screen. And we are recording this session today, so we will be putting it up on our YouTube channel in a few days' time. We have a number of previous webinars that are available online, so if you enjoyed today's sessions, I'd really encourage you to check out our YouTube channel for other topics. So let's get started, and over to you, Andrea.
Excellent. Thanks, Nadine, and good morning, everyone. Before we get started, I just wanted to review the agenda with everyone today. We'll look at what we're going to be covering in today's session. We're going to jump in here. There we go. We're going to start with a definition of engagement and talk about what engagement is. Then we're going to look at some of the new engagement models that are out there, or the new engagement model. We're also going to talk about customer experience and elements of creating engagement. Then we're going to dive into tools and processes, and then we're going to take a look at one particular solution that can help you to orchestrate client engagement. And then we're going to talk a little bit briefly about INM, just to understand why we're presenting this today. So let's look first at a definition of engagement. I find whenever we're talking about a specific topic, it's always nice to look at defining that common language in that definition so we're all on the same page. So the term customer engagement was first coined in 2006, and at the time it was defined as turning on a prospect to a brand idea enhanced by the surrounding context. But what does this really mean? I mean, that's a very formal definition. Then it was all about planting the seed in the customer's head about your brand or your product and the surrounding values and context for that. There has been a change in this definition in recent years, and I think really it's been evolving to reflect the active nature of today's consumer. So when we think of customer engagement today, it's more widely known as the degree and depth of visitor interaction. So the measurement of how active and how deep a user is engaged with your organization is what we're looking at today. And when you look at this process of customer engagement over the years, you know, the definitions change, but also the process of engaging with an organization has changed as well. So if we look at how customers have engaged over the years, you know, back in the 1900s, there was really only one way to engage. People would go to a store, they'd normally talk to the store owner, proprietor, and they'd have a very personal interaction. As consumer choice grew, evolved, that face of the company wasn't quite the same. So you might know the owner, you might not. There was more of a broad scale, larger organization that customers would interact with, and they didn't always have that personal connection. You'd also have the introduction of the telephone into the mix, so that you'd have the customer service potentially not being done in store but maybe being done over the phone. And then as the years progressed as well, there was the addition of the internet and the addition of email to that mix. So you would have people being able to interact by phone, by email, in person, or in a third-party store that sold goods and products of an organization. The one thing that's common about all of these channels is they were still completely under control of the organization or of the business. So people could dictate, what the store looked like, what the script was for customer service. They could also look at the website and the information provided as well as the way it was designed and presented. So this was something that businesses had full control over. Today, that's not necessarily the reality. The way that clients interact with an organization is phenomenally different than years ago. So there's been an explosion in the number of interaction channels that customers have, and the choice is really in the customer's hand, not in the business's hands these days. Consumers can find your organization through a variety of channels, and they can jump into that interaction cycle really from any point and can leap from channel to channel. You may not even know. You may not know where they're going or how they're interacting with your organization. Some of these channels are under your control as a marketer, and some of them you have little or even no control over. So for example, a customer may see a review of your product, or they may receive a promotion for your product. Jump online, they'll look at videos, they'll read about product information, they'll perhaps go to your Facebook page and like your company or your product brand. They may see a mobile listing as they're out and about, and then go in store or go into a third-party store to see your product in live in action. So this process in this cycle may seem like there are some limited opportunities for influence, but creating that consistent customer engagement process, it still is possible through this multiple channel world. And why is it that you want to do that? We're going to take a look at first the challenges of the new engagement model. So why is it that you want to create interaction? Well, clients are harder to win in this competitive landscape, and they're also harder to keep. But the cost of acquiring a client is certainly a lot higher than the cost of keeping one, so there's a lot of motivation for doing that. Client expectations are high, so even though you've got this multi-channel world, what clients are looking for and what clients want in that interaction cycle, they have very high expectations. We'll look as well as, we talked about control. Companies have a lot less control over the interaction engagement cycle. And creating, coordinating that effort across many channels is very challenging for organizations. But why should you care? Why is engagement important? Well, first off, number one, it increases sales. Clients that are engaged and entrenched with your brand are more active, and they are more apt to purchase, sale, and to buy products from you. And tied hand in hand with that, it also fosters loyalty. So we were saying it's more expensive to, it's less expensive to keep a client than to acquire a new one. And loyalty today is something that is quite fleeting. If we look at a recent publication from McKinsey, they're talking about the fact that 92% of consumers today are what we will call passive loyalists. So there are people who make a repeat purchase more out of habit than they do out of loyalty to the organization, and they're extremely influenced by competitors, and they're looking for reasons to change. So, keeping that loyal audience is something that's really important to do. And why? Because loyal clients are also brand advocates. So what is really interesting is that channels that organizations used to use to pull in clients, things like mass scale advertising and broad scale, television ads, interruptive advertising that used to happen on the web, on radio, and in television, it's really not effective anymore. So you need to look for other ways to have exposure to different target audiences, and creating those brand advocates that are going to talk about your products and to represent your products in smaller scale circles are something that organizations are very successful with. So creating brand advocates through engaged clients is a really nice way to do that. And to take that to the next step, consumers today really have become the new broadcasters. So consumers used to have limited exposure, used to be one people if they have a positive experience, but now with the advent of blogs and social media, one person can tell in a matter of 10 minutes. So that experience building and that cycle of engagement can be broadcast out to either a small specific audience or to even a broad audience if that consumer has a lot of value in terms of their exposure. We were talking about earlier a little bit about customers being more demanding. Well, this is definitely the case, and I think there's a few things that go into that. Customers today in their social life have interactions through social media channels, through things them to having an interactive and engaging experience through their social life. And they've really brought this forth into their business life as well. So what's interesting is that consumers, when they interact with a business, they feel that they deserve the same level of interactivity and the same level of recognition that they have in their personal life. So customers are demanding a more personal experience. They want to be recognized by name. They want to be recognized for their loyalty. They want to be part of the community of the organization. They also want something that's relevant for them. So they know that organizations are a bit like Big Brother, and they collect data and they have a profile of who these clients are. So they want to understand that, you know, you're valuing that relationship and giving them something that has value to them. So they want that experience to be relevant to where they are in the engagement cycle, relevant to their needs or their interests, to be in line with other information they've consumed from that organization in the past. They also want that experience to be social. You know, definitely we've talked about social media a little bit here, but we're going to get a lot more into that. That's influenced the way that consumers interact and engage with organizations greater than, I think, any other element up until now. So they really want the ability to not only engage directly with an organization and to engage with products, but to also engage with other consumers. So creating that ability for a consumer to have a social experience around your brand or product isn't a nice to have anymore. It's really a need to have, or a given that consumers are expecting. They also want that experience that they are having with you to be ubiquitous and to be multi-channel. They want that same ability to connect, whether they're on their phone, whether they're on a netbook, on a tablet, or on a desktop computer. They don't want to have their wings clipped and their ability to interact limited to a specific platform or specific channels. So having that ability to engage when, how, and whenever they would like is really critical. And when you're talking about engagement, one thing that organizations have to be very conscious of is that the experience during that engagement is really, really important. So creating and delivering a positive experience through your channels makes a huge difference to your brand value. If a potential client has a negative experience on any of your interaction channels, whether it's one that's under your control directly or not, it certainly can create a lot of channel lead to churn, can affect your ROI, and also can cost your company money to rectify the situation. And it also leads to brand erosion, so it's devaluing your product or your brand. In comparison, a positive experience on a channel can extend the value of your brand. It can create this feeling of community support and self-service where your users are actually acting as advocates for your organization and are providing other clients with information about your products and services, as well as support for your products and services. It also encourages customers to be able to serve themselves and to dig for more information if there's a feeling that the company's offering a positive experience there. It also creates greater loyalty, and it often accelerates sales as well. So when we talk about creating that experience, what goes into an effective and engaging experience? First, we're going to look at this in the context of, from the ground up, how that experience is built. So the first thing we have here is the data layer, and you may say, what does data have to do with a customer engagement cycle? Well, you know an awful lot about your clients, and a lot of the times organizations don't necessarily leverage this data appropriately to create the type of experiences that customers want. So if we look at the data layer and what impact that has, it really is what is at the foundation of powering that experience. Data collected about your users, how they interact with your content, the applications that they use, the demographic information about those users and their behaviors. It's the foundation that you can then build that experience on. It also is a way to aggregate data, without looking at personally individualized information, and to make certain decisions about how that customer engagement cycle takes place as a whole. And you can craft your engagement cycle around that. So the data layer is really the key, and then you combine that data layer with logic. So what logic is in this context is rules, workflow, information about how you apply that data to your customer engagement cycle. So, if your customer is coming to your website and they're from a specific demographic region and they or specific geographic region, sorry, and they fall into a demographic category, then drive them to this sub-campaign. Or drive them to a local promotion that's taking place on our Facebook page. So these types of interactions and making that process more relevant and personal can take place with the layer of data and logic coming together. The third component to that is the content layer. So if you think about what information and content that you've created and are using, how can that be applied to that customer engagement process? And how can that content be reused in different situations and scenarios? So pulling from a central repository, how do you create content that helps deliver that branded and custom experience? And then the final layer on top of that is the presentation layer. And this really refers to how the information is all pulled together and delivered in a multi-channel environment. So how is it packaged for someone coming on their cell phone, someone coming on a tablet, etc. So this all comes together to create that overall experience. When we look at this in a little bit more detail, we'll start with the front end, because that's where we left off on the last slide. We're going to look at the presentation layer and how this comes together. So this involves delivering an optimal experience to any user, anytime, anywhere. Customers want that ability to engage where, when, and how often they wish, and they want that delivery to any user on any platform. But it doesn't necessarily mean the same experience on every platform, and I think that's really important, and this is something that we're seeing businesses paying a lot of attention to now, because particularly in the US and in Canada, in other areas it's not quite so prevalent, but data and bandwidth on mobile devices is fairly limited. You don't have unlimited data, so pushing out the experience that you have on your corporate website where you may have a lot of video and you may have a lot of content that's high-resolution images, just making that available on a mobile device is going to kill somebody's bandwidth plan. So how do you manage to create the same level of interaction and the same level of engagement to a user that's coming on a mobile device? There's some technologies out there that can downscale the video size and the bit rate in order to create the same experience, but designed for the mobile device. So looking at how you can tailor it and how you can, create something that's got the same level of engagement but isn't necessarily going to react the same way. So we talk about content and using compelling content in applications. The first thing I think that's really important in talking about content, and is something that's often overlooked because this is approached from a technology angle rather than from a pure engagement angle, is are you really creating content that's worth sharing and something that customers want to engage on? And I think this is something that is really critical if you're looking at your content strategy as an organization in creating customer engagement. So do you have something compelling? Do you have something that makes sense to deliver multi-channel? Do you have something that is going to be viral, that's something that clients want to share, they want to read, they want to engage with? Got that, then how do you create those applications or those channels or those content pieces and get them out to your audience? How do you design content that has the ability to be shared in different environments? and how do you leverage this content on many devices. This is something a lot of organizations struggle with, especially large multinational organizations that may have teams in different geographic areas, and they're all producing content, and that content is not leveraged throughout the entire organization. So it's very important to look at how you can use tools and technology to basically create a central repository that then gets pulled for campaigns. Most organizations create the same content 4, 5, 6 times over, and it's because they don't know it exists, they don't know that it's available, they've got it locked into a portal, got it in aggregate system, so they don't even know that they can leverage it. Really interesting is how you can to make make an interaction more relevant. So we talked a little about flow and rules and how you can take data and make that packaged into a very custom experience. How can you create personalized content? So if somebody's a regular viewer of your website and they're coming back on a weekly basis, you know, address them by name, like, hi John, you know, have a section that's there so that when somebody's logged in or somebody's personally identified, that there's going to be a custom experience for them as part of the content. A lot of organizations are also playing with multivariant or A/B testing on their website to create a completely different experience in specific areas for users, and this I think is a great idea. Even technologies like Google Analytics, Website Optimizer, as well as some of the commercial products out there have the capabilities to do sort of testing and targeting of website content to make that experience more relevant and personal, and to allow you to see, is it effective or not? So using logic to create it, but then also using data to be able to monitor and optimize that is really critical as well. So how can you create targeted content and deliver it to users however they wish? And we talk about you know, data, so looking at aggregate data. So how many people are visiting your site, specific content that's popular, specific processes and flows through your website that are the most popular page paths. That's also very interesting to look at. And then when you get into more personal data to show engagement on an individual level. So this is perfect for creating what we would call segments, so building a group of people that all have a similar demographic profile, a similar geographic profile, or the similar behavior profile, and then creating an experience that's for that particular audience, and being able to track the success of that and optimize that as need be. So this data can be used for anything as easy as fueling personalization on a marketing campaign, so you get a Dear John email instead of just a, you know, Dear Client, or you know, having a very targeted experience like we were talking about. And you're able to see those results and to optimize those interactions. And there's many different ways that you can track your data and monitor it. We're going to look particularly at one application and one platform and how that works in a little bit. The other aspect is in making things mobile. We talked about the any user, anytime, anywhere approach. What we're seeing here is an application from Adobe called the Adobe Digital Enterprise Platform, but there's many different ways that you can design for mobile. This particular situation or this particular platform allows you to see on every device what your website looks like. And there's a lot of tools out there, website emulators, that allow you to do this as well. But what you can do here is, when we were talking about designing for mobile, is you can see exactly, like on this particular version of a BlackBerry, this is what my services section looks like. So you can see here that on the website version, there may be a pile of different images that display. There may even be a video of the services, but it's pared down just to text for the mobile version for BlackBerry because it's going to load faster. It's going to be a better mix for the information that that user is looking for. If you've got the same view of the website on a tablet, for example, you may have a few more images, a little more text. You may have it aligned as a 2-column layout instead of a 1-column layout. It's the ability to customize that look and feel for each device. The other aspect we talked about earlier and we touched on was the concept of making it social. So that expectation that consumers have for social interaction. So being able to create and nurture a community, whether that community is your own community that you're building. For example, this is a website community here in Canada that talks about deals, and it's a very active platform that they've created where there's forums, there's people posting, there's people commenting. It's a very active community, and you can build that kind of community around an organization or a brand as well as a topic. Like this is people that are obsessed with deals. You may have people that are obsessed with jeans and they want to talk about the newest style of jeans that are out there. So being able to take either a themed topic or a product brand and build that community around it, I think is really important. That community may be something you're creating on your website, or it may be something you're leveraging social channels to build. So you may create a branded environment on Twitter, a branded YouTube channel, and a branded Facebook page, and then tie those into your overall engagement strategy. So how do you ensure that customers that are coming to your site and customers that are coming to your site from those channels feel that there's a consistency and that there's an engagement cycle that they're part of. So having that branding and using that content that you've created for your site, repurposing some of it for Facebook, taking some of it and putting it on a branded YouTube channel with videos, that creates that interaction cycle that customers feel that there's consistency there. And customers feel very connected to an organization. They feel there's a bit more of an intimacy with that organization if they're familiar with and they're comfortable in that environment. So it's important to build these channels. It's also important to create reasons for users to connect and reasons for them to share. You know, maybe there's incentives for users to be able to share content or participate or, you know, be part of a contest by sharing or liking a Facebook page. But the other thing you need to do is to monitor these communities and participate in them as an organization. So it's great if you have this culture of sharing and this audience that's you know, brand advocates, and they're out there talking about your products and services, but if you don't know about it and you don't react to it, you can create a very negative customer experience in one of those channels and not even know it. So being able to monitor across those channels and to be able to react accordingly is great. And also from an analytics perspective, being able to know the impact of those channels and how they affect your organization is critical as well. So, you know, if you're really putting a lot of effort into your Facebook page, what's the conversion rate from your Facebook page through to a client? Stuff like that is really important to know. Now, this is great, but this is a very complicated thing for marketers to manage. If we're talking about, you know, adding data and logic and capturing information and creating very personalized experience that are going multi-channel, today that's a bit like everybody dancing to the beat of their own drum for marketers, because you may have disaggregated departments within your organization that's responsible for social, one that's responsible for the website. So creating that synergy and having everybody come together under one choreography can be a challenge for marketers. And why is that a challenge? Well, today marketers often leverage what we call best-of-breed solutions. So they may take, you know, the best email platform, the best website content management platform, and use those as their solution in those areas. But being able to have that view of the client becomes challenging, because you may have data sitting in your website content management system, you may have data sitting in your web analytics platform, data separately for that client in your web campaign management software. You may also have a specific email marketing tool that you use that collects other data about the client. So you're not building that cohesive view or that cohesive profile of a user unless you're collecting all of that and kind of hobbling it together through some help of your IT department and creating more of a customer profile. So you're not getting the best of what you can out of your marketing platform by having these disaggregated systems out there. So you're going to have challenges if you've got to report numbers. You may have one platform that reports a site view as a particular metric and another platform that creates an engagement view, and you're going to have trouble with combining those numbers together to create an accurate picture of how many customers you're working with, how engaged those clients are, how many exposure opportunities they've had on different platforms. Keeping that view centralized is really going to be super challenging. It also relies a lot on dependencies and connectors and bridges between these technologies, whether they happen to be direct or custom built, and there's a lot of reliance on IT. So when you need to create a report or you need to look at data, you may have to query your IT team and say, can you combine this database and give me a consolidated view of the information? And that could be quite a challenge because IT departments today are just saturated with requests from the organizations as a whole, but marketing in particular. So how does this work? How can you make it happen if you've got this challenge of these disaggregate systems? Really, marketers need to take ownership of their own technology, and there's a whole new breed of solutions out there on the market that are more what we would call web experience management platforms that combine the functionality of campaigns, client profiling, metrics and statistics, and create that one integrated platform and that one connected view of the client. So if we look at how organizations can do that, they can use one platform in order to have an integrated view. So that platform should have the functionality to deliver mobile and multi-channel. So by 2013, this is a very compelling statistic, the number of mobile devices will exceed the number of desktop devices. So what this means is that organizations that don't have a strategy in place and don't have the technology in place to deliver to that mobile and multi-channel environment, they're going to be missing like half the population. They're going to have a very limited customer base because they're not even going to be able to engage or talk to half the people out there. So multi-channel and mobile is really, really critical. The other element we've talked about is that customer expectation for a more personalized and a more targeted connection with the organization. So if you don't have something in place today that gives you that global view of the customer, you're never going to be able to deliver targeted campaigns. So being able to be proactive, to look at the stage of the sales cycle an individual's in, and then to be able to not aggressively, but I guess assertively push out content that's at the right time to the right user in a digital environment is really key. We talked a little bit about the concept of recreating content and the challenges organizations have there. Well, certainly having one central content repository where you have the ability to manage multiple sites, one, as well as pull content from a central location to feed those multiple sites, whether that happens to be a corporate site, a regional language-specific site, a mini site for a campaign that you're building. Being able to have that view of the content and of the logic even and apply that in a multi-site environment is really key. And also analytics. Analytics are really critical, and organizations need to understand how performance metrics track to business objectives. So looking at metrics both from an aggregate view, from a campaign and a website perspective, and how those tie together, as well as individual metrics and information. And success ratio and engagement levels is really key. And then finally that social aspect, so the building of communities, creation of brand advocates, the interaction of those consumer broadcasters and how those can all come together for the success of your business is really key. So before we get into, I wanted to just give you a little bit of information about a product that we're working with that helps to create this integrated view. We are partners with Adobe, and we've become enterprise business solution partners with Adobe, and we work very closely with what they call the Adobe Digital Enterprise Platform. This is an excellent tool for organizations that are looking to take control over that full customer engagement cycle. What this platform does is it allows you to manage your content on a central level, to be able to provide that social interaction, the business processes and logic, create content and applications and reuse those across multiple channels, as well as to use the analytics and the optimization aspects to continuously monitor, manage, and optimize your business processes in relation to your customer engagement cycle. That allows you to deliver any user, any client, and to create that experience end-to-end. How does the ADEP, or Adobe Digital Enterprise Platform, create engagement? If we're looking at how that ties to the topic we're looking at today, it really does a great job of aligning marketing with business objectives, of bringing together multiple data systems and multiple data sources, and multiple systems to create that one view of the organization and the client. It allows for sharing and reuse of content across the enterprise, and it delivers that multi-channel measurable experience. Certainly there are a number of solutions out there in the market, but this is an extremely powerful one that is really geared for marketers to manage themselves. There's certainly an IT component to it on the initial setup, but from the day-to-day processes, it's meant to be designed and used by marketers. So that comes to the section about integration new media and who we are. As I mentioned before, we're an enterprise solutions partner with Adobe. Over the years, we've worked with various clients in many different industries. We'll show you some examples in a couple of slides there. But we've been around for 20 years. That's a nice picture of our office in downtown Montreal. We share some space with the yellow pages there. We have a team of about 25, which is a mix of project managers, designers, developers, and UX experts. What our mission is to build digital solutions that deliver results. So we work very closely with the Adobe Digital Enterprise Platform, and how we add value and services around this platform is we work with organizations to do workflow mapping, integration, customization, training, as well as there's a very strong component with that platform for extension of the platform, particularly around mobile applications, rich internet applications, and creating that interactive front-end experience. In addition to the Adobe platform, because that's something that is new in the last couple of, the last year or so, we have a rich history in user interface design. So we have a team here that does UX design and user experience design. We've done web development in many capacities over the years, and we have a very strong presence in mobile development as well, in terms of either doing cross-platform applications, mobile websites, as well as native application development for mobile platforms. We've, for the last 5 or 6 years, been very strong in rich internet application development, and that's involved anything from doing product configurators, that's a tough word, product configurators for e-commerce websites, through to very complex enterprise applications that are more for operational efficiency, that type of thing. We have a very strong play as well in the digital publishing space and creating a way to deliver rich content online, which also ties back into that engagement process, and as well with customer experience consultation around these tools and technologies. At the heart of everything we do, we really feel that there's a strong balance to be had between creating a usable and unique user experience, building software and applications and processes that are very highly structured and adhere to the best practices of application design, and meeting business objectives. So creating that sort of triangle relationship between those 3 aspects. Some of our clients, we've got clients in the publishing sector, the telecom sector, healthcare as well, in the entertainment space, as well as in the corporate space. And that's the end of our content. So I definitely would love to hear if you have any questions.
So definitely, thank you very much, Andrea, for this really great presentation. And I really would like to open it up to questions. So as you've seen, there's a little question box on the right-hand side of your screen. So please feel free to type any questions that you have. I'll give you a few seconds or minutes there to think of some or to type them up. And actually, interestingly, during the while you were presenting, I had a question from one of our attendees. So
excellent.
I could maybe just deliver that question. So the question was actually, how practical is it to migrate any existing system that they have into one, like you seem to mention, that is integrated? Yeah,
I mean, this can seem very scary for marketers because it's kind of like pulling the rug out from under them, but it's not. I mean, I think the key is that having those disaggregated systems that have specific expertise in one area, you don't have to create the situation where you replace them all at once. That's the other factor. When you're looking at moving toward a continuous platform,
you can implement that on
a modular basis as well. So you can set up your website first, use content management capabilities for that to start,
then
to be able to say, okay, fine, now I'll add the analytics component.
Now I'll
turn on the function for testing and targeting and profile creation.
So you don't have to just
take everything at once and pull it out and start fresh. Anything like this, any of the solutions that exist on the market are designed to be modular so that you can start with one particular business line or business unit or one process and then expand beyond that. So I think the benefits that an organization gets from having this connected view of the audience definitely justifies the investment in time, but it is something you can do over the course of several quarters to make sure that there's no interruption in that engagement cycle that you've already created.
Okay, that's interesting. I think that seems less overwhelming to have to do all of that at once.
You don't have to pull the plug and start fresh.
But it's interesting because this topic, I speak to my clients as well about it, and one of the questions I've had recently from a client that might be worth addressing is that there's so many different levels of engagement, as you explained, and is there any way that we can do more harm than good by having engaging them in all these different levels?
Yeah, I think that the organization definitely has to be ready in order to move to this model of this continuous engagement cycle, and you need to have the appropriate level of resources in place. So opening up the floodgates with one person behind the dam is really not a good plan. So how can you make sure that you have this process in place? It really requires a lot of planning, and it does require, I think, that overall view of the client to be able to say, okay, are we reaching all of our engagement objectives, and then how can we make this happen? So
I think that as long as there's
strong monitoring of the processes that you are engaging in, you're okay.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks. And actually, one of the very popular questions, as always, is if we're going to be posting this presentation online. So the answer is absolutely yes. We do have a YouTube channel, so it's going to take us a couple of days probably just to have that posted online. But definitely I encourage you to check out our YouTube channel. In the meantime, we have some other topics, as I mentioned earlier. So feel free to have a look, and within a couple of days we should have this presentation available.
And everybody who's attended today will receive a follow-up message with a link to that recording. So definitely if you want to share it with any of your colleagues or pass it along or rewatch it to get some more detail on anything, that'll be available to you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So I'm not seeing any other questions coming in, so I think that we can close the recording for this morning. So thank you.
I just want to mention one thing. Sorry. We are actually offering this session again in December, and we're doing this as a co-webinar with Adobe. And at that time, we will be doing a demo of the Adobe Digital Enterprise Platform as part of that session. So December 6th, if anyone wanted to come to that session or send any of their colleagues or friends to that session, you can register on our website now for that.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
And thanks.